LDL cholesterol might actually not be bad. Let's jump into why that actually is and what is cholesterol in the body, because maybe your practitioner or primary care doctor is not really explaining it to you that well, and so perhaps you feel a little bit lost. So let's do a deep dive training into cholesterol and why you actually might need it in the body for several different pathways to be optimal health. If you're just new joining this channel, I'm Troy Rice. I'm an integrative health practitioner and naturopath, trained in several different disciplines, including anti-aging and longevity, as well as lab expertise and helping people really dig into what's going on inside their body. So let's dig into this training on cholesterol. All right, so what's the importance of cholesterol? Well, it helps cell membranes for protective layers to control what enters or leaves the cell. It helps your liver make bile needed for digestion of food, and it supports your body's production of vitamin D and hormones. And so what I've included here is a grid that most of us never see in our lifetime, but is so important for several different hormone productions in the body, okay? And so what I want to call out on this grid is vitamin B5. Kicks off all of this, right? So making sure that you have the right amounts of vitamin B5, and then that goes down through several pathways, one of which in there is cholesterol, right? That then circulates LDLs, which then is needed for progesterone, pregnenolone, DHEA, testosterone, estrogen, and cortisol. So you can see how important it is to make sure that you actually have cholesterol to reach all of these different pathways. So let's dig in a little bit more about cholesterol, what the different forms of it are, the lipids involved in the process, and then lifestyle factors that can either help or hinder the ability to be in good health when it comes to cholesterol. So moving on to slide 2. So what is cholesterol? So two types of cholesterol. You have dietary cholesterol, which is 20% of the total cholesterol in your body, and that's consumed through the foods like eggs, beef, fish, pork. And then you have serum cholesterol, which is in the blood, okay? And that's 80% of total cholesterol. We're going to talk about each of these. But that's synthesized in the liver and then the tissues and then circulated throughout the bloodstream. And we're going to show how throughout that circulation and certain transports where LDL gets a bad name for helping to, or where it blocks arteries and things like that, okay? So dietary cholesterol can affect blood lipids, right? So it does have a correlation effect that can lead to increased serum cholesterol. So that's key, right? Because many times we learn, well, you shouldn't eat eggs or don't eat too much butter or whatever. That's not necessarily true. It's understanding how much you're eating of that, how it's building up in the body, and how that affects or is correlated to increased levels of serum cholesterol. So what does it look like when cholesterol is absorbed from a dietary perspective? So let's say I go and I eat eggs, okay? This grid shown here actually helps provide a nice illustration of what really happens, okay? So dietary cholesterol is absorbed in the body as free fatty acids. It binds to what's called micelles in the body, which are just lipid molecules, travels through the intestinal wall, then through the lymphatic channels, which is why lymphatic drainage, and if you've ever heard about, doing things like dry brushing or bounding to help your lymphatic system move, right? That's why these things are so important. And then it's synthesized in the liver before transporting out into the serum cholesterol levels, okay? So that output ends up being VLDL, and that is the very low density lipoproteins, which we're going to talk a little bit more in depth in the next slides here. So cholesterol synthesis. So again, this is the serum or the creation of cholesterol as it moves throughout the blood, okay? So it's not the ingestion of food per se. So serum cholesterol synthesized in the liver and transported via complex particles referred to as lipoproteins, which are proteins that are able to travel through the blood delivering cholesterol to the tissues, which is absolutely needed, right? And we talked about the pathways in the beginning slide. Low density lipoproteins transport the majority of cholesterol in normal human plasma and distribute to the peripheral tissues. Again, actually needed in the body. So you can kind of start to see the picture where cholesterol is absolutely needed. It's some of the lifestyle factors that we do that start to build up, and the combination of different particles that block arteries and things like that can cause problems for our health. So there they bind to LDL receptors, and after endocytosis, the intracellular cholesterol will be used to build cell membranes, okay, which are absolutely needed as well. So over here on the grid, I don't like to get too scientific for those that don't really want to get lost in this information, but this is an example of basically how cholesterol synthesis from a serum perspective is synthesized in the liver and how it's transported throughout the body. And then it even brings in the lens, which is labeled step B here on the right, dietary fat and cholesterol, and how that goes, again, down into the stomach, into the intestines, and that's where it binds with free fatty acids, and then ultimately makes its way synthesizing through the liver, just like the serum cholesterol does as well. So they kind of join through the liver per se. So what about LDL versus HDL, right? And I put this grid over here on the right, which is courtesy of Cleveland Clinic, but a lot of times what we hear in the media, maybe even from our doctor, is, you have HDL, which is good cholesterol, and LDL, which is bad. And I want to kind of break that myth here and just talk about it more at a scientific basis so that you can kind of understand, well, what makes it good, what makes it bad, and what is really needing to be known here. And so LDL, low density lipoproteins, which is made mostly of cholesterol, which then delivers that to the cells, okay? And it receives a bad reputation because they can combine with other substances and build up on the walls of the artery. So now I want to point you over to the grid again. So if you look at the bottom of the grid there, it will show LDL particles in the bloodstream, right? And then you'll see how it combines with other things that ultimately lead to plaque formation and narrowing of the arteries, which are like, high amounts of VLDL in the body, and then several other particles. And we're going to talk a little bit more about fat particles like triglycerides that can cause some of that blockage. So you can start to see how it can narrow an artery with the LDL and how it's considered to be bad, but not necessarily, right? And we're going to talk more about that at length. And again, so VLDL made mostly of triglycerides. We're going to do a deep dive into triglycerides here in the next slide. HDL, high density lipoproteins made mostly of proteins and are known for helping to take extra cholesterol out of the bloodstream and then transport it to your liver. So what's critical here is a lot of times when we talk about cholesterol and the naming of them, we forget that it's really LDL and HDL are the transporters. Like they're actually transporting the cholesterol within our body, okay? So they're vessels. And I actually included a link here to a short video that explains that in length. And so I won't cover that here, but what I want to drop in is the link to this video where you can actually see how LDL and HDL act as vessels for transporting cholesterol throughout the body and how they are not necessarily the cholesterol themselves, right? They're the lipoproteins. All right, triglycerides. Fats from foods we eat, right? So some foods we eat are in triglyceride form already, such as butter. Extra calories from alcohol and sugar in your body can turn into triglycerides or fat storage in the body. The body stores it in our fat cells. And I'm also going to do a deep dive on the 9 principles of fat loss or fat gain, so you can understand like how we have X amount of fat cells in the body and how we push X amount of fat cells into our tissues, and that's kind of what expands the body. But we're going to dig into that in a later training. So if that's interest to you, drop a comment below, and we'll dig into that more further. Too many triglycerides can increase the risk of pancreatitis and heart and vascular diseases, including several of these listed here. It's different than cholesterol in that they are strictly fats, okay? And then the liver packages up triglycerides, cholesterol, and proteins together to form the lipoproteins, okay? And so the grid on the right is important to understand because what happens if you have too much triglycerides in the bloodstream, okay? So you can see where the recommendations, and we're going to go through it at the end, of where you might want your triglyceride levels to be at, okay? So if it's around the 150 to 199, it will look similar to like this in the bloodstream, right? There'll be the triglycerides, there'll be the blood cells, and it will be free flowing, okay? Then you have a little bit more of high triglycerides, and you can see the buildup of those fat molecules with the red blood cells, and now all of a sudden it's at a 200 to 499 range, and you can start to see the buildup. And then severe, which would be several triglyceride buildups of different fat triglyceride cells, and then that is more of the greater than 500. So if you're in that range, definitely want to go through a plan where you're working on with a practitioner or your doctor on lowering your triglycerides so that you're avoiding the blockage or buildup in the bloodstream. All right, types of lipoproteins, okay? So round particles made of fat, that is lipids, and proteins that travel in your bloodstream to cells throughout the body. So what do those include? Well, we've talked about several of these: HDL, LDL, VLDL, there's IDL, and then there's cytochroms, which happen throughout the process of the synthesis of the serum cholesterol. But what you're really looking for is optimal levels are for heart protectiveness, right? High levels increase risk of heart issues. So what we want to do is we want to optimize the amount of lipoproteins in the body, not create an abundance of them through certain diet and lifestyle choices that sometimes we make. And then we look to something like blaming LDL as the culprit when really we actually need the LDL and we need the VLDL in certain aspects, but we don't need a buildup of them through different lifestyle factors, and we're going to talk about that. Two primary proteins for lipoproteins are ApoA and ApoB. There's actually a specific test that you can get done. So if you're used to getting your annual physical with your doctor, you probably have gotten a blood test done, right, that shows all of your cholesterol levels, LDL, HDL, triglycerides. But maybe it doesn't actually get to the ApoA, ApoB levels of those proteins. And so that would be called an advanced lipid panel. I'm actually going to provide a link to that test if you're interested in ordering for yourself or working with your practitioner or doctor to get that test as well. But it can be an indication of LDL buildup in the bloodstream, and that's why you might care about learning about those. All right, so genetic factors. So when it comes to genetics, there's a lot of stuff out there around. Well, back in the day, it was your genes defined, who you're going to be. If your parents had it or somebody in your ancestry had it, then you're going to have it. Well, we're showing that's not true, right? So could you have the DNA makeup and some of the gene variants related to your ancestry? Absolutely. But a lot of times we're figuring out that it's lifestyle, right? We have trillions of cells in our body that are listening to us on a daily basis. And so we're finally getting to the point where we're learning that epigenetics, which is the expression above your DNA sequence, matters on how you live your life, how you're communicating to your cells, the environments you live in, and all of that plays more of a key role in things that can cause harm or issues with your health. So what I want to call out here, though, is there are genetic variants that relate to a more of a buildup of LDL in the body, or a potential binding issue, or when it comes to actually like synthesizing through the liver, it could cause some different problems with maybe missing enzyme or missing methylation factors and things like that. So I always want to call out that if you are aware that you have these, what would be good to know is how you're living your lifestyle. You might want to consider how your body is handling transporting these lipoproteins. Okay, so the familial hypercholesterolemia, or FH for short, can be caused by inherited changes and mutations in these particular genes. So if you've had a genetic test done, you would see these genes on it, right? The LDLR, the ApoB, and the PCSK9. I've actually shown grids here that actually show you exactly what happens with that mutation. So there's a normal process on letter A there that you can see that it goes through. And then if you have an LDLR mutation, you can see that there's a particular thing where it doesn't bind to a mutated, or it does not bind at all because of that LDLC gene variant. And then it can accumulate LDL in the circulation. So if you go back to one of those grids, the accumulation of LDLs in your bloodstream could be related to this particular pathway, okay, or this gene variant. And then you drop down to the ApoB dysfunction. Again, that results in binding issues again with LDL receptors, and then another receptor issue through the PCSK9, okay? Now, how many people have this in the world? 1 out of 250 people have this genetic mutation, which then again can increase. I say can. It doesn't absolutely increase, so it can increase risk of coronary heart disease by 22 times at a younger age. But that's considering certain lifestyle factors. So I'm going to offer you some tips here at the end so that you can consider what to do if you happen to fall into one of those groups of people, right? Nearly 60 to 80% of people with FH have a mutation in one of these genes. And so, again, lifestyle factors is a huge key. So what are some things that actually negatively affect your cholesterol? So overall, age, normal aging process, and if anti-aging longevity is of interest to you, we're actually launching an intensive program soon. You'll see more about it in our Wellness Mavericks community. I'll share more about what that looks like, but basically it's slowing aging because aging is being studied to be a form of dis-ease in the body, which is a natural form of aging of your cells. But there are certain things that we can do lifestyle-wise that actually help us stop aging. And then there's also conversely things that actually speed up aging, right? So that's a factor. Poor diet, lack of exercise, gene mutations, which we talked about, sex assigned at birth. Sometimes men and women are different for processing cholesterol in the body, right? So whether you're a female or a male, that might matter. Bile acid production. So as we age, it's been studied that we produce less bile, and therefore you need help with bile production in the body because it helps with breaking down fats in the body, breaking down food. And so a lot of times what we consider happens is you might have like a gallbladder issue per se, because your gallbladder is what produces the bile. Your liver produces the bile. It's stored in the gallbladder, and then when you eat, it releases it into there to break down your food and your fats down in your intestines, right? And so bile acid production issues can cause problems for cholesterol as well. Triglycerides. What raises triglycerides, right? Alcohol, diabetes, liver issues, kidney issues, certain medications, body mass index greater than 25, inflammatory diseases like rheumatoid arthritis, okay? Smoking, thyroid issues, and again, lack of movement, lack of physical activity. What could raise your HDL? A diet, poor diet, smoking, excessive weight, lack of physical activity, medications, and bile acid production issues, okay? And then how about for LDL? Very similar, right? All of them are pretty much the same. So you can see certain lifestyle choices that you make will absolutely impact all the different LDL, HDL, and even triglycerides in the body by choosing lifestyle factors that actually support you and not harm you. So what can you do about it? Before we jump into some quick tips and some lifestyle things that you can consider, what can you do about it, right? Well, what we do for our clients, we recommend that you consider testing it, whether you work through your primary care doctor or your functional medicine practitioner. Consider a few additional labs there, and I have links that I'm going to provide below, but your APOB advanced lipid panel test or the APL lipoprotein advanced test there link. A functional medicine test to help you understand that, which can show you some of your cholesterol levels as well. A functional medicine detox, which is not like your typical juicing detox or cleanse. It's a Ayurvedic functional medicine that goes in, it binds to the toxins in your biofilms, and it releases it through all your toxic pathways. So it'll help your liver, it'll help your gallbladder, it'll help your kidney and your pancreas, and then it'll excrete it through all those different pathways, right? Whether it's urine, stool, sweat, or even air, right? A lot of times we forget that we breathe out toxins. So what else? Liver and gallbladder cleanses, intestinal cleanses, toxin removal techniques are helpful. And then implementing a better lifestyle. And we have what we call the de-stress protocol. And I'm going to share a link to a free guide to help you get started with that as well. All right, so what are some quick tips? So what I like to leave with several of our clients is a lot of this gets overwhelming, right? Especially if we do a deep dive into their blood panel that they've gotten from their doctor. They want to understand it because I don't know if you're like me or like other clients that I have, which is they get their blood work done, but their doctor doesn't really do the greatest job of explaining it, right? Other than a lot of them result to, well, you might want to consider a statin, right? Or this medication. And so what I would encourage you to do is work with a practitioner or find a doctor that is willing to dig into and explain what you're actually seeing on your test results. So then you can start to build a plan. Basically, it's what are you living today that's causing you problems? How can you create a new you that you care about? And then what does that look like to implement it? Whether you have a coach, yourself, accountability, and then start to measure the success. Like you start to see your levels drop, right? You start to feel better, start more energy. So here are some quick tips. And I have tons of resources on several of these different things. Okay, so sleeping 7 to 9 hours at night if you're an adult. If you have biometric tracking devices, what you're really looking for is at least 2 hours of REM sleep for brain rejuvenation, right? At least an hour and a half of deep sleep, which is full body rejuvenation, and having 7 to 9 hours will help you reach that, right? Because you'll have all your sleep cycles, you'll be able to hit that more frequently, you'll come into body recovery, okay? Walk 7 to 10,000 steps a day. So many of us sit, right? Like I'm sitting for this training right now. Many of us sit all day. So just getting up and moving, frequently throughout the day, tracking your steps if you can. If you have a Fitbit, a watch, there's several different devices you can use nowadays. I personally have an Oura Ring, but making sure you hit that. There's several studies around walking related to several different factors of health, including reversing of things like Alzheimer's, which is crazy. Okay, so I'll provide resources or check out more in our community. Routine exercises, whether that's aerobics, HIIT training, strength training, body weight training, could be speed walking, sprints if you're up for that. Just mix of all different exercises, including stretching and things like yoga that are more relaxative exercises as well. Okay, diets high in fruits and vegetables, so 7 to 9 servings of fruits and vegetables, moderate healthy fats, olive oils, avocado oils, things like that. And then moderate proteins, whether that's your plant-based proteins or some meats, whatever you prefer. So this, what would a typical plate look like, right? 50 to 60% fruits and vegetables, 20 to 25% fats, and 20 to 25% proteins. That's a pretty easy ratio. If you are just getting started, just try to shoot for that, okay? Limit or avoid alcohol, refined sugars and carbs, and high saturated or trans fats if you see a cholesterol problem until you can figure out what's causing that. Again, there's two different dynamics here, right? There's the serum cholesterol, which you could be having issues with the synthesis of the liver and the intestines. And so what's happening there and figuring that out, maybe you need to cleanse, maybe there's a buildup, right? Maybe there's blockage of the liver. And so how else could you support that? Well, maybe you try not to eat so many foods that are high in saturated fats or high in cholesterol, so that you can work on that. But it's not saying eliminate it forever, right? I'm not telling you not to eat eggs. I'm just saying think about how this works synergistically with you. Avoid smoking. Optimal intake of B vitamins. We talked about B5 and how that's the beginning of that pathway. It's so important, okay? And then optimal intake of vitamin D3, which helps with several different things in the body, especially immunity, inflammation, and those things, okay? So what are you looking for on your test? As your cheat sheet, a lot of times you can get any of this information out there in the Cleveland Clinic or several different websites. Hopefully your doctors explain this, but this is just kind of a nice reminder, right? So what should total cholesterol look like? Well, age 20 or younger, 75 to 169 is usually a good range. Age 21 and above is 100 to 199, okay? For HDL, you're looking for men above 45, women above 55. LDL, heart or blood vessel disease or diabetes, you're looking for less than 70. If you have metabolic syndrome or heart risk disease, less than 100 is great. And then if you have low risk of coronary artery disease, then less than 130. I wanted to give those parameters because it matters of where you're at with your current health status in your life, okay? Triglycerides, less than 150. APOA, if you're getting the advanced lipid panel done, you're looking for less than 30 for the APOA, and then you're looking for less than 100 for the APOB. I have had questions in the past is, well, what happens if my HDL is too high? It would be all in consideration, right? So there's not too many studies out there around HDL being too high and how that's caused certain problems or correlated to certain problems in the body. What I would encourage you to do is look at HDL in comparison to other things that are on your test, right? So what is your total cholesterol, your HDL, what does your LDL look like, your triglycerides. And if your LDL is in range, your triglycerides look good, your HDL is good, you're probably okay, right? But make sure that you kind of, look out for the signs and symptoms and work with your practitioner. Additional resources. These are some common questions that have come up to me as a practitioner, so I wanted to be able to share this with you. A lot of times people are like, well, do eggs actually raise your cholesterol? And there's an excellent video and a link here, so I provided that. Is there a correlation between dietary and blood cholesterol? Meaning, what happens if you limit one and don't limit the other, or if you limit both, or if they're both high? And so this video explains that. LDL cholesterol levels, your lab results explain. So it's a deeper dive into what you would care about. Atherosclerosis, cholesterol, LDL, HDL, and triglycerides. That was just something that, many clients that had concerns of atherosclerosis or, plaque or built up in the arteries and the bloodstream. So I wanted to provide that link as well. I always want to encourage at the end of all trainings that I do, I want to encourage you to be kind and have patience with yourself. I can't tell you enough how often this happens with clients where they go through this phase where they want to change, they need a change, they're ready for a change, and they go through various different stages of change and they kind of revert back because they believe it's not working, or they've chosen something that's either too restrictive or they hate it. And so now they're in this game where life is like this giant resistance of obstacles that they've created for themselves. And I don't want that to be you, okay? So be kind to yourself. Work with a practitioner that you trust and think about these stages, right? You're going to pre-contemplate it. You're going to contemplate it. You're going to prepare for it, take action, maintain it. Maybe there's a relapse. And I'll give you a good example here. Like many times people go through weight loss programs, right? And they get to, let's say they lose like 10 to 15 pounds within a matter of a month and they're feeling good. And then they kind of plateau a little bit because their body's figured out that they're going through some changes. They've kind of adapted to that. And they think that it's not working, but it is, right? It actually is working, but there's like this plateau phase, and that's kind of where they might consider relapsing if they don't have a good coach. So I want to encourage you that when you're on a good continuum, keep progressing, keep measuring, keep doing things that you love, work with somebody that you trust and care about, and then know that it's working and be patient with yourself, because it will work out best when you build habits long term and not think that it's not working. If this is something that you struggle with yourself, I would encourage you to work with somebody in our wellness center or reach out to a practitioner in your area, because it's so important to have a coach in these moments. All right, so to wrap up here on this, if you're looking for extra help, again, functional medicine detox links there, at-home labs that you can access at home, which is incredible. Like the vast array of accessibility to getting testing done for yourself to learn about your body is just massive nowadays than it used to be. So you can access up to like 3,000 different labs from multiple different companies, working with a practitioner. I'm trained and have access to over 3,000 labs that I can offer to people. So consider that. There's links to learn more, detox protocols, cholesterol podcast to do more deep dives, and then there's always a link to schedule a free consult with me if you'd like. Again, I've provided a free guide below to help you build basically a de-stress lifestyle, and I want to be able to offer that at no cost, right? Because I want to help you get started. So I hope that deep dive was amazing and you enjoyed every single moment of it. And I can't wait to offer more trainings to you. Please access the links below, and I'll see you next time.